Welcome to the deep dive. Come on in.
Yeah, get comfortable.
Seriously, consider yourself the third person at the table with us today.
Exactly. We've got a massive stack of materials to unpack, and we're really glad you're here for it.
We are, and today's mission is, well, it's a big one. We are looking at this towering pile of industry transcripts.
Executive playbooks.
Right, executive playbooks, technical blueprints, and just a whole lot of internal operational data.
It's dense stuff.
It is. And it's all centered around a topic that honestly usually makes people suddenly remember they left the stove on and run for the hills.
Yeah, the ultimate corporate acronym that people love to hate.
Right. We are talking about GRC, governance, risk, and compliance.
It really does bring up a lot of trauma for anyone who has worked in a mid to large size company.
Oh, absolutely. Traditionally, when you hear GRC, it sounds like the absolute ultimate corporate snooze fest.
Mm-hmm.
It brings to mind this bureaucratic nightmare of dusty binders.
Endless checkbox forms.
Yes. And those mind-numbing annual training modules where you just click next as fast as humanly possible until you get the certificate.
We've all done it.
Right, exactly. But we are immediately flipping the script today because the architectural blueprints and the executive strategy documents we're diving into paint a completely different picture.
Completely different.
We are entering what the industry is calling the grad school era of GRC.
I love that phrase.
It's so good. It's the story of how cutting-edge automation and artificial intelligence are taking this incredibly painful manual tour and transforming it into a multi-million-dollar strategic advantage.
Yeah.
It is wild to see how much money is actually on the table here.
It is a fundamental revolution in how modern businesses operate. But before we get into the weeds of the new technology.
Right, the AI stuff.
Yeah, before the AI frameworks, we need to set the philosophical stage for you, because this entire shift hinges on one central question. As you listen to this, and as you think about your own organization or the companies you invest in, I want you to ask yourself this. When you look at the company, are you spending all your time proving you're in control, or are you actually being in control?
Okay, hold on. Proving you're in control versus actually being in control.
Right.
Let's unpack that, because it sounds like a subtle difference, but functionally it's massive.
It changes everything.
Because if you're just proving it, that means you're just playing defense, right?
Exactly.
You're constantly looking backward at what already happened just to satisfy an auditor.
Precisely. And that backward-looking posture is exactly what creates what the executive playbooks refer to as the hidden operating tax.
The operating tax.
Yeah. It is an illusion of control, and companies pay dearly for that illusion.
In actual capital, right.
Both in actual capital and in lost operational momentum. You think you are managing risk, but all you are really doing is managing paperwork.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about that tax. Because if we're paying for an illusion of control, how do we actually identify where the money and time are bleeding out?
You have to look at the symptoms.
Right. Let's start with the symptoms, the relatable pain points. If you are at a growing company, you have probably felt this GRC drag.
Oh, for sure.
It's that familiar, painful scenario where compliance slowly mutates into a second full-time job for everyone.
Everyone gets pulled in.
Yeah, you've got your brilliant engineering teams, your IT staff, your finance department, people who were hired to build amazing products and grow the company.
And suddenly they're doing what?
They're being pulled away for these massive week-long audit fire drills.
And it always starts innocently enough.
Does it?
It does. A young company gets a few simple requests for evidence from a client. A screenshot of a system configuration here.
A log file there.
Exactly. But as the company grows, it snowballs.
Right.
The root cause of this snowball effect, according to the operational data we reviewed, is silos. GRC doesn't usually appear fully formed as a unified strategy.
No, of course not.
It grows organically in highly isolated pockets across a business.
Which makes sense. A company doesn't start on day one saying, we need a global governance structure.
No startup founder is thinking of that on day one.
They just react to whatever's right in front of them.
Exactly. So you end up with your information security team over here totally zeroed in on cyber risks and getting their SOC2 report.
And for those listening who might not live in the cybersecurity world, SOC2 is a major auditing procedure. It ensures a service provider is securely managing data to protect the interests of the organization and the privacy of its clients.
And it is notoriously grueling.
Grueling. It's the badge of honor you need if you want to sell software to any serious enterprise. So InfoSec is sweating over SOC2.
Yes. And then, down the hall, your legal department is wrestling with privacy laws like GDPR.
Which is the General Data Protection Regulation, the massive privacy law for the European Union.
Right.
It dictates exactly how you can and cannot handle consumer data, with massive fines if you get it wrong.
Meanwhile, your internal audit team is off in their own totally separate world, dealing with financial controls.
Like SOX compliance, right? I know that's a big one for publicly traded companies.
Exactly, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, or SOX.
Born out of the massive financial scandals like Enron and WorldCom in the early 2000s.
It requires public companies to have incredibly strict documented controls over their financial reporting so that investors aren't being lied to.
Right.
So you have these three major teams, InfoSec, legal, internal audit, all managing massive, complex frameworks.
And they are all using different languages.
Different languages.
Different priorities and completely different tools to basically look at the exact same underlying company systems.
Yeah.
It sounds like organized chaos.
Organized chaos is putting it mildly. The financial toll of this fragmented approach is staggering. Let's look at the hard numbers from the research data.
Okay, let's hear the numbers.
A recent survey highlighted that the average annual budget just for a SOX compliance program is $2.3 million.
Wait, $2.3 million?
Yeah.
Just to maintain compliance for that one single financial framework.
Just for SOX.
We haven't even touched the cybersecurity audits or the privacy laws yet.
Exactly. And the critical takeaway from the research isn't just that isolated $2.3 million figure.
What is it?
It's the trajectory. These costs are actively growing year over year.
Wow.
It tells us that these siloed, fragmented systems are becoming increasingly expensive just to keep the lights on. It is a massive drain on human brainpower and capital that could otherwise be invested in actual innovation or product development.
I can hear people listening to this and thinking, well, we recognize that problem, so we went out and bought software to fix it.
The classic move.
Right, because that's the classic corporate move. Throw a software license at the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But the playbooks we're looking at highlight a massive trap here. They call it tool fatigue or death by 1,000 clicks.
Death by 1,000 clicks.
You spend a fortune on a big, shiny, expensive new GRC software platform. The vendor promises total automation and beautiful, glowing dashboards.
They always do.
But then, crickets. Adoption stalls completely. And within 6 months, everyone quietly goes back to doing things the old way. Why does that happen? Because on paper, the software looks like the silver bullet.
It happens because companies fundamentally mistake technology implementation for operational change.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
This is a recurring theme across all the executive transcripts we analyzed. There's a deeply ingrained, almost stubborn belief that simply installing a piece of software on a company's network will magically alter human behavior.
But it doesn't.
But human behavior defaults to the path of least resistance. Always. If the new GRC tool requires a busy IT manager to log into a separate portal, remember a new password, and click through 15 different screens just to upload a single piece of evidence.
Yeah, it won't do it.
They won't do it.
They will find a workaround immediately. Humans are incredibly innovative when it comes to avoiding annoying administrative tasks.
Very true.
Which leads to one of the most dangerous vulnerabilities mentioned in our stack of materials, the rise of shadow spreadsheets.
Ah, the shadow spreadsheets.
Yes.
This is where the illusion of control really shatters. What the data shows is a fascinating psychological and operational disconnect.
How so?
When a process is too cumbersome, your official multi-million-dollar GRC platform effectively becomes nothing more than the system of record.
System of record, meaning what exactly?
It is a formal archive, a graveyard where dead historical data lives strictly to be shown to an auditor once a year.
But the actual system of work, how the risk is truly being managed and tracked day to day, is happening completely offline.
Exactly.
It's happening in rogue emails, in direct Slack messages between engineers, and in 20 different conflicting versions of an Excel spreadsheet sitting on someone's desktop.
And that gap between the official system of record and the hidden system of work is precisely where compliance risks are born. That is the blind spot.
Because it's invisible.
Right. If the platform isn't being actively used, the controls are effectively failing in real time without anyone knowing. Evidence goes missing, people forget to update the spreadsheet when they go on vacation, and audit failures become inevitable.
So think about your own workplace for a second. Have you ever been in a meeting where the word critical is defined completely differently by the security team than it is by the finance team?
It happens all the time.
Do you have the exact same risk control managed by 3 different teams, called by 3 different names, tracked in 3 different Excel files?
Probably.
If you're nodding your head right now, you are paying that hidden operating tax. You are bleeding efficiency.
And recognizing that diagnosis naturally forces a pivot in how we design these systems. The architectural blueprints make it very clear that you cannot fix this by just yelling at people to use the software more.
Right. Mandates don't work.
They don't. It requires a fundamental shift in design philosophy.
Which means we have to start designing for the human element, not just the auditor. The materials present a really interesting guiding star for this. They say, you must design for the busiest control owner. If the workflow isn't dead simple for the most overworked person in your company, the workflow will fail.
It is an immutable law of workplace dynamics. As we said, the compliant path must be the path of least resistance.
Right.
To achieve this, the experts who authored these blueprints outline a very deliberate, 4-phase, human-centered plan. First, you have to truly understand the day-to-day reality of your users.
Meaning you don't just ask a manager how a process works.
No, you sit with the junior analyst actually doing the data entry.
Okay.
Second, you build incredibly simple, minimum viable workflows based on that reality. Third, you validate those workflows with the actual frontline staff. And finally, you operate the platform with continuous active support and measurement.
And there is a very strict, almost ruthless rule attached to this design philosophy, right? The 5-minute rule.
Yes. The 5-minute rule. The premise is that if a compliance task, a periodic review, or an evidence upload takes a control owner longer than 5 minutes to complete from start to finish.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. If it exceeds that, the process is fundamentally broken. Think about it from their perspective. These people have primary jobs to do. They are writing code, they are closing sales, they are balancing the books.
Compliance is an added burden on top of their actual goal.
Precisely. If that burden exceeds 5 minutes, they will inevitably push it to the bottom of their to-do list, and eventually they will revert to those shadow spreadsheets and email chains we just talked about.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here. 5 minutes sounds great in theory, but some of these compliance tasks are incredibly dense. Is it really possible to boil everything down to under 5 minutes? And if you do, what kind of return on investment does that actually yield? How do you measure the ROI of simplification?
It requires breaking large annual tasks down into micro actions that happen continuously, and you can absolutely measure the ROI.
What do the numbers say?
The operational data sets we reviewed show that when companies transition to this dead simple human-centered approach, task completion inside the official platform skyrockets. We are talking about jumping from a dismal 35% on-time completion rate all the way up to a healthy 85%.
Wow. From 35% to 85% just by making the interface less infuriating.
Just by making it easy. And the operational shift cascades from there. Because the expectations and the workflows are now crystal clear, evidence rework drops by 40%.
Think about the sheer volume of frustrating back-and-forth emails between an auditor and an engineer that this eliminates.
Exactly.
Hey, you sent me the wrong screenshot. Hey, this log file is from the wrong date. That entire friction loop is cut by nearly half.
Furthermore, the overall audit prep time shrinks dramatically. What used to be weeks of frantic, all-hands-on-deck scrambling right before the auditor arrives is reduced to just a few days of calm, organized verification.
Just a few days of calm work. That sounds like an absolute fantasy for anyone who has ever survived a major corporate audit.
It does.
But to really get there, the materials suggest we have to cure another disease that plagues these organizations. They call it compliance theater. I love that term.
It is very descriptive. Compliance theater is the act of looking very busy and producing a massive volume of paperwork without actually making the organization any safer, more secure, or more resilient.
It is activity masquerading as achievement.
Exactly. And the root cause, according to the playbooks, is almost always incredibly vague, poorly defined goal setting.
Give me an example of that. What does a theater goal look like?
It looks like an executive saying, we need to improve our security posture this year. Or we will hold quarterly security awareness meetings.
Right. What does improve posture even mean? It's completely subjective. And holding a meeting doesn't mean anyone actually paid attention or changed their behavior.
It's a wish, not a measurable operational plan. This raises a critical question.
Yeah.
How do we set goals that actually protects the business. Most professionals are familiar with the SMART framework for goal setting: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound.
That's a great baseline for general business.
It is, but the blueprints we are looking at argue that for governance, risk, and compliance, it is simply not enough. They introduce an upgraded framework called SMART Plus.
Okay, so what does the plus stand for? Let's break down the mechanics of SMART++.
The plus factor addresses two critical functional elements that are almost always missing when companies set GRC goals. First, every single goal must be explicitly linked directly to a specific, identified risk.
So you don't just improve security, you target a known vulnerability.
Correct. Second, you must design the evidence up front. You have to know exactly what done looks like and mathematically how you will prove it to an auditor before you even begin the work.
So instead of tracking mere activity like we held 3 meetings about password security, you are measuring actual outcomes that reduce a specific risk. So a SMART Plus goal would be something like reduce unauthorized system access by 90% by the end of Q3 through the mandatory implementation of multi-factor authentication measured by weekly active login logs.
Exactly. The first is compliance theater. The second is an actual functional control. You move from simply checking boxes to actively governing the living system of the company.
I see.
And when you scale that rigorous mindset across the entire organization, across all departments, you set the stage for the true engine of transformation, which is integrated risk management.
Integrated risk management, or IRM. Let's paint a picture based on one of the executive transcripts to really understand why this matters.
Go for it.
Imagine you are at your company and a massive multi-million-dollar deal is on the line. Or maybe you are attempting to launch your product into a brand new, highly regulated European market. You're sitting in the boardroom, the CEO turns to you and asks one simple, terrifying question. Are we ready? What could stop us from launching next week?
In a traditional siloed organization, answering that question is an absolute nightmare.
Because nobody has the whole picture.
Right. The security team pulls up one dashboard showing recent vulnerability scans. The privacy team opens a massive spreadsheet tracking GDPR user consent forms. The compliance team references a completely different set of folders on a shared drive.
So everyone is working incredibly hard.
Yes, but no one is telling the unified story of the company's actual risk posture.
And that fragmentation doesn't just kill the board's confidence, it actively kills deals. It turns GRC from what should be a protective shield into a massive, heavy roadblock.
It does.
The research data lays out the defensive stakes very clearly here. The average cost of a single data breach in the U.S. is now over $10 million.
$10 million. That $10 million is the baseline price tag for having slow, inconsistent, and broken risk management. It is the cost of a siloed failure.
Wow.
But what is truly fascinating about the strategic playbooks is how they pivot from that defensive, fear-based posture to an offensive advantage. This transformation isn't just about avoiding a $10 million disaster. It's about accelerating business velocity.
Yes, the offensive advantage. The data shows that by integrating risk management, companies can cut the delays in their sales cycles by 25%.
That is massive.
It is huge, because if you sell B2B software, you know the pain of the security questionnaire. Your sales team gets a prospect ready to sign, and then the prospect's IT department sends over a spreadsheet with 300 highly technical security questions that takes your team 3 weeks to answer.
The dreaded security questionnaire.
Exactly. If you have an integrated system, you are getting those answers to your enterprise customers faster, and you are closing revenue sooner. That is how you turn a cost center into a strategic growth engine.
To build that engine, the industry is shifting toward an integrated risk operating model. And the blueprints detail 4 foundational pillars that support this model. Let's break them down.
Okay, what's the first pillar?
The first pillar is adopting a risk framework that actually speaks the language of the business, rather than just dense technical jargon.
Which means no more telling the CFO that server rack B is missing a critical patch. You have to tell them what the actual business impact is.
Correct. The second pillar is establishing one shared control library across the entire enterprise. This is the mechanism that instantly kills duplicate work.
Okay.
The third pillar is creating an always-on evidence collection process, which officially replaces the chaotic annual audit fire drill.
Always on evidence.
Yes. And the fourth pillar is utilizing trust-rated, real-time dashboards. Dashboards that don't just display raw data, but actually tell executives mathematically how confident they can be in that data's accuracy.
Okay, I want to zoom in on that second pillar, the shared control library. Because the documents talk about this concept of build once, map many, and frankly, this seems like absolute magic for anyone who has ever been stuck in the compliance weeds.
It really is a game changer.
I like to think of it like a master key.
That's an excellent analogy to help visualize it.
Instead of carrying around a massive, heavy janitor's keychain where you have one specific key for the front door, one slightly different key for the back door, and one for the main office.
Right.
Which in GRC terms means having one specific control written for SOC2, a slightly tweaked version of that same control for ISO 2701, and a third variation for your internal financial audit.
You create a master key.
You create a master key. You build one single, highly authoritative control. Let's say it's your policy for reviewing who has privileged admin access to your core systems. You make that one control flawless, and then the software automatically maps that single control to every single regulatory framework that requires it.
It fundamentally obliterates redundant work. You test that control once, you gather the evidence once, and that single piece of evidence satisfies multiple different auditors across completely different frameworks simultaneously.
That is brilliant.
And we have concrete real-world proof of this in the case studies we reviewed. There is a detailed breakdown of a fintech company referred to as Northbridge Pay.
Right, Northbridge Pay. They were growing exponentially, buried in audits from multiple regulators, and actively trying to expand their operations into Europe. It's the classic perfect storm of compliance chaos.
Exactly. Their manual processes were actively threatening their expansion timeline. They decided to overhaul their entire infrastructure and go all in on this integrated risk management approach.
And what happened?
Within just 1 year, the operational results were transformative. By utilizing that build once, map many philosophy, they were able to collect audit evidence 45% faster.
Wow.
They completed their vendor security reviews 35% faster, and the amount of wasted, duplicated work across their various teams dropped by a staggering 40%.
And as the strategic documents point out, you have to look at those numbers through a business lens. Those are not just compliance metrics. Those are business velocity metrics. A 35% faster vendor review meant they could onboard critical new software faster. It meant they got the regulatory green light for their European expansion months ahead of schedule. It meant their sales team wasn't waiting weeks for security approvals to close deals. It changed the entire pace of how the company operated.
It is definitive proof that when you move from manual, siloed spreadsheets to an integrated data platform, GRC ceases to be a bureaucratic burden and becomes a direct, measurable enabler of business strategy.
So true.
But as powerful as IRM is, the playbooks make it clear that it is really just setting the data foundation for what comes next, because the technology landscape is currently evolving at an unprecedented rate.
Oh, this is where things get truly futuristic. But the wild part is, it's happening right now in production environments.
It is.
The transcripts make it very clear that we have reached a major technological tipping point. We have this perfect storm pushing GRC into the future. Regulatory requirements are getting insanely complex, cyber threats are more sophisticated and faster than ever, and corporate boards are demanding real-time transparency.
The old manual ways literally cannot compute this volume of data anymore.
They just can't.
To use a driving analogy, traditional manual GRC is like trying to drive a car down the highway at 70 miles per hour while only looking in the rearview mirror.
That sounds dangerous.
It is.
Yeah.
You are endlessly documenting the potholes you already hit last quarter. Modern GRC is about turning on the headlights. It is predictive, it is highly integrated, and it is largely automated.
And the brain powering those headlights is artificial intelligence. The technical blueprints break down how generative AI is stepping in as this brilliant co-pilot.
That's incredible.
By using natural language processing, it can ingest and read incredibly dense new legal regulations, like a massive new 500-page update from the European Union, summarize the key impacts in seconds, and automatically suggest how to map your existing controls to the new legal framework.
It takes analysis tasks that used to take human compliance officers weeks and does them over a cup of coffee.
It's just wild.
Generative AI is an incredibly powerful analytical assistant, yes. But this brings us to what I believe is the most radical paradigm shift in the entire stack of source material we reviewed.
Okay, what is it?
We are moving rapidly beyond AI that simply assists or analyzes, and we are entering the era of AI that acts. We are talking about the agentic core.
The agentic core.
To truly understand the necessity of giving AI this level of autonomy, we need to look at the high-stakes reality of modern incident response.
The dreaded 3 a.m. alert scenario.
Precisely. Imagine a critical security alert triggers at 3:01 a.m. on a Saturday morning. In the past, maybe your team could triage it and investigate it when they logged in on Monday.
Right.
But today, you are facing incredibly strict time-bound regulations. For example, the materials highlight a recent SEC rule that requires public companies to disclose material cybersecurity incidents within just 4 days of determining that an incident is material.
Oh, days.
4 days. If your team is relying on manual checks, manual ticketing systems, and if your developers are deploying new code daily, you will lose that race against the regulatory clock every single time.
Okay, I have to stop you there. Because the idea of an agent, a digital worker powered by AI, sounds great until you realize we are talking about giving an AI the power to act on our live network.
It's a big step.
What does the agentic core do differently than a normal alert system, and how do we not accidentally break our own company by letting an AI run wild?
It is the biggest shift in the industry, moving from reporting to executing. In the old world, your GRC dashboard was essentially just a reporter. It would flash a red light and tell you, hey, a critical firewall door was left open yesterday.
Right. And then a human analyst had to see the alert, log into a ticketing system, create a JIRA ticket, find the right network engineer who is probably asleep, and ask them to please close the door. The time to resolution is measured in hours or days.
Exactly, but an agentic AI doesn't just report the open door. It sees the open door in real time.
It sees it.
It consults the shared control library we talked about earlier and recognizes that this configuration violates a core security policy. And then, utilizing predefined API connections, it autonomously reaches out to the system and shuts the door immediately. It executes the fix.
Okay, but what if that open door was left open intentionally by a senior engineer who was running a critical midnight patch on the payroll server? If the AI just slams the door shut, nobody gets paid on Friday. That terrifies a CTO.
And that is exactly why the technical blueprints emphasize the absolute necessity of strict guardrails.
Guardrails, okay.
The AI operates within a deeply defined human-in-the-loop framework for critical systems. The agentic AI might have the autonomy to instantly sever an unauthorized external connection, but for internal systems, it might gather all the diagnostic data, prep the exact lines of code needed for the fix, and present a simple approve-deny button to the on-call engineer's phone.
Ah, I see. So it's orchestrating the entire fix and gathering the data via direct API pulls, which is a huge detail the blueprints mention.
It is.
It's not a human manually taking a screenshot of a dashboard and saving it to a folder. The AI is pulling the raw telemetry data directly from the system via API, which means the evidence is mathematically verifiable and mathematically perfect for an auditor.
Precisely. It is shifting GRC from a passive system of record into an active, self-healing system of execution. These intelligent agents handle complex, multi-step tasks all on their own.
And the ROI on that?
The ROI of this autonomy is absolutely massive. The operational data shows that by using this agentic approach, organizations are reducing their sheer alert volume by up to 70%.
70% less noise?
Exactly. It filters out all the noise and automatically fixes the routine misconfigurations so the human experts can focus their brainpower on the truly complex novel threats. Furthermore, it cuts routine, manual compliance work by 50 to 70%. It is continuously creating audit-ready, highly defensible evidence without any human intervention.
That is staggering efficiency. But, and this is a massive caveat that the playbooks scream in bold letters, you cannot simply plug an AI agent into a messy, siloed system and expect miracles, right?
No. If you automate a chaotic, broken, undocumented process, you will simply generate chaos at lightning speed.
Right, you just get faster chaos. You'll have an AI breaking things efficiently all over your network.
Exactly. So the architectural blueprints outline a very disciplined, deliberate 4-step rollout for these agents.
What are the steps?
First, you must fix your underlying data architecture. An AI agent is only as smart as the information it is fed.
Makes sense.
Second, you must define your controls as code, meaning you have to translate your written PDF policies into automated executable tests that a machine can understand.
Okay.
Third, you establish those robust human oversight and guardrails we discussed. And fourth, you start incredibly small. You target one high-value, low-risk project to secure a quick win and build trust before you even think about scaling it across the enterprise.
It is an incredible, highly technical blueprint. But here is the reality check. None of this incredible technology, Not the AI agents, not the integrated IRM platforms, not the 70% efficiency gains. Well, none of it means anything if the IT director can't get the CFO to approve the budget to build it.
That is the hard truth.
Which brings us to a critical bottleneck highlighted in our materials, connecting the tech to the boardroom. Because right now, there is a massive communication gap between the technologists and the executives holding the purse strings.
It is perhaps the single biggest point of failure in the entire industry right now. Picture this. An IT director walks into a boardroom and tells the leadership team that a specific cyber risk on a legacy server is high, and they need $1 million to upgrade it.
Okay.
To a technical person, high implies a severe architectural vulnerability.
Right.
To a chief financial officer trying to balance a capital budget, it means absolutely nothing.
Right.
You cannot expect a CFO to make a multi-million-dollar investment decision based on a color-coded traffic light on a PowerPoint slide that says red.
Exactly. If I'm the CFO, my response is, okay, it's red, but will it cost me more than the $1 million you're asking for if I just ignore it?
That's the question they always ask.
You have to speak the language of the business, and the language of the business is dollars and cents. The materials introduce a concept to bridge this gap called cyber risk quantification, or CRQ. How does CRQ actually calculate a dollar amount for a cyber threat? Because it sounds like guessing.
It isn't guessing. It relies on complex probabilistic models, often using Monte Carlo simulations.
Okay.
CRQ is the ultimate translator. It takes deeply complex technical threat vectors and translates them into financial impact. It calculates the probability of a specific attack succeeding, multiplies that by the exact value of the business downtime per hour, factors in the likely regulatory fines, and adds the cost of incident response.
So instead of walking in and saying, our server vulnerability risk is high, the CRQ system empowers the IT director to say to the board, this specific ransomware threat targeting our central customer database has a 15% probability of occurring this year, and if exploited, our modeling shows a potential financial impact of $3.2 million.
And the software required to mitigate it costs $50,000.
Oh, wow.
When framed that way, the CFO says, that's a no-brainer. The ROI is obvious, approved.
Yeah.
It fundamentally changes how resources are allocated across the company because you are finally having a unified business conversation, not a disjointed technology conversation.
And we are seeing this shift toward financial quantification and integrated risk reflected in the broader market landscape.
We are.
The source materials provide a fascinating survey of who is actually adopting this and what tools they are buying. Unsurprisingly, the banking, financial services, and insurance sector, the BFSI sector, is leading the charge here.
As always.
The data shows they drive nearly 25% of the entire GRC market demand, which makes total sense. They're arguably the most heavily regulated industry on the planet outside of healthcare.
And the vendor ecosystem rising to meet that demand is incredibly diverse now. Organizations have to be very careful to choose the tool that matches their specific maturity level.
Give me some examples from the sources.
For instance, the reports detail heavyweight clients like IBM Open Pages, which are highly complex, deeply customizable platforms designed for massive global enterprises with incredibly complex supply chains.
But if you're a mid-market tech company, IBM Open Pages might be overkill.
Exactly. So you look at highly flexible, no-code platforms like Logic 8. The materials highlight them as great for companies that need to build very customized workflows quickly without hiring an army of developers.
What else is out there?
You also see massive ecosystem plays like ServiceNow. If an organization is already heavily invested in ServiceNow for their general IT ticketing and service management, keeping their risk management in that same ecosystem makes logical sense to reduce friction.
That makes sense.
And then you have platforms like Audit, which the research specifically highlights for their highly intuitive, human-centered design philosophy. In fact, the data notes that Audit saves its customers an average of $1 million a year, strictly through workflow automation and eliminating the manual grunt work we talked about at the beginning.
$1 million a year in hard savings just by letting software do the paperwork. That is incredible. But as we start to pull all these threads together and wrap this up, the executive playbooks are incredibly clear on one final absolute prerequisite.
The most important one.
None of this, not the AI agents, not the CRQ models, not the $1 million workflow savings, none of it works without the right leadership in place. The documents call it the tone at the top.
Executive sponsorship is the linchpin of this entire transformation. You can buy the most sophisticated AI risk software in the world, but if the leadership doesn't actively publicly support the operational shift, it will fail.
So what does true executive sponsorship look like?
True executive sponsorship requires three very specific non-negotiable commitments. First, leadership must mandate and formally approve a single unified language for risk across the entire enterprise. No more departmental silos speaking in different metrics or using different scales for what critical means.
Right, you force InfoSec, legal, and finance to use the same dictionary.
Exactly. Second, they have to actually fund the operating model, not just buy the software licenses. They had to invest in the change management process, the human training, and the actual redesign of the internal workflows. You can't just buy the Ferrari and refuse to pay for gas or driving lessons.
That is a great analogy. And the third commitment.
And third, they must demand real-time, trust-rated dashboards in their board meetings. They have to flat out stop accepting stale, manually compiled, week-old PowerPoint presentations from their teams and insist on seeing the live, continuous state of the system via the integrated platform.
Which brings us to our big takeaway from this entire deep dive. If you step back and look at the incredible journey GRC has taken, the transformation is staggering.
It really is.
It is no longer a post-mortem exercise where you just document what caught on fire last month. It's no longer an annual firefighting project where everyone scrambles to satisfy an external auditor and then immediately goes back to ignoring the rules.
Yeah, those days are ending.
Modern GRC is a living, breathing, continuous state of the system. It is a predictive engine that not only protects the company from catastrophic fines and multi-million-dollar breaches, but actually accelerates its growth and speeds up its revenue cycles.
It is a profound evolution from a back-office burden to a boardroom strategy. And for those listening who are ready to drive this shift in their own organizations or looking to invest in companies that are doing it right, the playbooks leave us with a definitive 5-step call to action for 2025 and beyond.
Let's hear the 5 steps.
1. Honestly assess your current automation maturity. Don't pretend you are ready for AI if you are still using shadow spreadsheets.
Good point.
2. Clearly define your business goals and Smart Plus metrics before you purchase a single piece of technology. 3. Aggressively break down the operational silos between your compliance, legal, and security teams.
Essential.
4. Build your architecture with a cloud-native, scalable mindset from day one. And 5. Measure your ultimate success not by the volume of administrative busy work you complete, but by the actual quantifiable reduction of financial risk in your business.
It is a brilliant, actionable playbook. But, spending all this time looking at these architectural blueprints, especially the capabilities of these new autonomous agentic systems, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
I'm ready.
Think about the trajectory we've discussed today. We are moving from AI that analyzes to AI that acts. If agentic AI continues to evolve and becomes fully responsible for autonomously detecting threats, mapping the controls to complex global laws, and executing the technical fixes for compliance gaps in real time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week,
Right.
At what point does the AI stop being just a tool that manages risk and start becoming the actual governing conscience of your company? And if the AI is writing the rules, mapping the controls, and enforcing the fixes across your network faster than human beings can even read the code, who is auditing the AI?
That is the critical question that will define the next era of enterprise technology.
Something to think about next time you have to click through a compliance module. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you on the next one.